Chat later, John.
You have any guys online yet?
Yes, we have Rob Miller, the
You get
Director of
Oh, is he
Eastern
zooming?
Health District, yes.
Okay.
Oh, he's zooming.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Libya.
So you gonna admit those guys?
Pass it to Jason.
That's fine.
This is a good idea.
Right there.
How about this uptown?
That's weird. Did you admit Rob Miller?
No,
It was a nice day.
I don't know if it's consent, just come in.
No, it's not. You have to admit. I don't see where it says admit, yeah.
Oh, they were.
Why you might hold
Normally it says.
Well, yeah, because the waiting room is on top and joined is down below.
It's not,
But there's two, Linda must have called in twice.
she's probably on a phone and.
Oh, well, there's two iPhones. All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. Just the minutes of last meeting, do you have any edits, additions, deletions? Yes. Oh,
So before we get to that, I'd like to just add something to the agenda under all business. And I'd like to review watercraft inspection procedures at the beach because there's some confusion.
Okay.
If there's time, I'd like to add it there.
All right.
For all of them.
All right, you need a motion.
To discuss inspection procedures at the beach because there's some confusion as to what they are under our current.
You want an old business?
All business.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a second from Bob, and all in favor, aye. Any opposed, any abstentions, so moved, okay. On to the minutes.
Yes, Mary and I had suggested edits, so Phyllis sent them to all of you just prior to this meeting, and then you'll hard copy here in front of you.
Yep.
Like to suggest that the minutes be amended to reflect these changes.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, Mike, on the editing of the minutes, and the only reason I didn't add all of that stuff in there is simply because my understanding of doing minutes is an overview, not quite so detailed. But if you want to edit minutes in the future, get them to me right away, because once I send them to the town, we can't edit those until the next meeting.
Right, I understood that, Phyllis, I never saw them to suggest that it's as a draft, so if you could send them just to LMAC as a draft, and then we could.
I'll
edit
send them out earlier after I do them.
Before you submit them to the
Yeah.
town. I agree, they don't need to be super detailed, but they need to be detailed enough for people to understand what we're.
Yeah, if there's any,
What we're
if there's any key context. I get
So
it.
in
Yeah,
the context of our boats, it's like Chris Craft, and we own two Chris Crafts, so how you would ever know which one we're talking about,
Fair enough.
I don't.
Yep.
You wouldn't, so
Yep.
that kind of detail I thought was important for clarity,
sure,
Okay,
and
but
so.
it was also on the videos and it's also there too. You know, when we do the video, it's
Yeah.
also there.
Fair point. I don't know how many people actually watch the videos as opposed to reading the minutes. I know there's plenty of people here, because I hear this at our meetings and at the P and Z meetings and at the BOS meetings. People do go online and read the minutes, so. If we can
Okay.
make them clearer, I think it's in our interest to do that,
That's fine, thank you.
but
Right.
thanks.
I have something about the minutes too.
yeah,
So I missed what you were saying, but it relates to that. Brent Burnett is one who wrote the letter. And in the minutes, he spoke about Chris Craft and someone else. And in his letter, he never spoke that there was a Chris Craft or a specific person. And he asked me to convey that.
Okay, I think
That was put in.
yeah, the minutes that we edited did not reflect Brent saying it was a curse track. It did reflect that he said someone's extremely passionate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in the minutes, it does say your name actually in Chris Craft.
Yeah, we
Correct.
changed it to say someone reported to the town
Okay.
that the Chris Craft.
Sorry, I was late by a minute, but.
So, that's okay, well, you didn't see this,
Well, thank you.
first, yes.
Okay,
So sorry, Mike, so I think the action is, for Phil to send the minutes just to LMAC as draft.
that's right, yeah,
For comment before they go to the town, if that's not too much trouble for you,
Nope,
Phil.
nope,
I
nope.
think in the end, it'll make it.
Yeah, it's easier. You wanna do the edits, you do them before I
Yeah.
submit them to the town.
Perfect,
Yep.
okay,
okay. All right,
so we can accept
yep,
the revision.
There seem to be some blanks in the planning and zoning subcommittee on page two. It's got our names, Mary Royko, Noreen Farrington, Henry Beck, and then a dash mark Carter to blank interact for solutions. So I don't know what was intended there, but maybe we can just put that sentence out, I don't know. What we need.
They're just,
Start a subcommittee, yeah,
They're-
just need a subcommittee.
oh, the underscore, yeah,
Well, all of the names, I don't think need to be there.
right,
So I would just delete all of the black print at the end.
You don't wanna know who's on the subcommittee?
Well, that's in the prior minutes.
Oh.
Otherwise, you can say, you can make it a sentence and say the subcommittee consisted of, if you want to do that.
Yeah, just so people know.
yeah. All right, that's fair, that makes sense. All right, so. We have a motion to accept the minutes.
I move that we accept the amended minutes.
Minutes, okay, and we have a second, all in favor, aye, any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved, okay. All right, we have our guest tonight, Rob Miller. Hi, Rob.
Good evening.
And Carl Nielsen.
And Carl, oh, there you go, I'm sorry, Carl Nielsen, hello.
And Rob Miller is the chairman or the director of the Eastern Highland Health District.
Yep. Right, and we have Greg Stryker also online, so. Was there,
Olivia Evans
So-
and Linda.
There were two reasons why we asked Mr. Miller to be here and Carl Nielsen. The first reason was the stormwater drain number 2 in the E. coli issue. Where are we? Where do we need to go from here? And so we asked Rob and Carl to be here. The second is, generally speaking, septic systems on the lake. And Rob had some thoughts and discussions relative to that, and we may have questions relative to that. At some point, I think we need to, beyond what we have done now in terms of education, understand septic systems and understand what, if anything, we can do to be better at managing septic systems in the watershed area, but in specifically on the road. So that's why the intent of the invitation. You want to turn it over to Rob and Carl?
yeah, please, go ahead, guys.
Hi, Rob.
Hello. So what I had just planned on doing tonight is just kind of provide an overview of the health district's efforts to assess a very kind of rough preliminary assessment of the source of the water from SD2, which TRC's been sampling for, has had a couple of samples. I'm not completely familiar with the sampling plan for TRC. I'm sure Carl can get into that, but I am aware that there was an objective to do some sampling associated with precipitation event. The results from that sampling as it pertains to at least SD2 location was of concern. And so the town asked the health district to do an assessment of the watershed area serving that discharge point to see if we could identify any potential sources for both what was at least indicated in that one data point, elevated E. coli levels, and some phosphates and nitrates that were perhaps above background. So we did that. And so our efforts involved reviewing the street files from a number of properties in that area, 6 properties in particular. We visited the site, staff visited the site on 3 separate occasions. And in fact, I went out there today myself just to make sure that I had some direct knowledge about what was on the site and what my staff observed and the observations they made. We grabbed 3 surface water samples, one from SD2, one from another discharge point, a stormwater drain, which serves a cluster of catch basins on Lake Road, which and the discharge pipe culvert runs down the right of way just west of the subject properties to the lake. So we took a surface water sample there, and then we also took a surface water sample right behind Adoni Road, to Adoni Road. There was a small seep. The water level in the lake was pretty low, and there was some seep, some groundwater coming out at that point. So we grabbed a sample there. And so staff, as a result of those 3 walkovers, review the property files, and the observations made during those walkovers, and review of the water sampling data. Staff put together a site, a very rough site plan. I think, I believe Mark or Mary forwarded copies of that rough site plan that we put together. Perhaps if I could share my screen, we can even throw it up there and help it inform this conversation.
Rob, everybody has it in their packets, right?
Okay, that's fine. So what I want to basically, before I kind of go into
Is there packets given out for everyone?
Not everybody in the audience.
Okay.
We can share if you want, if everyone wants to look. I can look at it.
And there's actually an extra packet on the corner.
Are you gonna share screen?
I could try that, probably take 10 minutes.
No, just click on it.
Anybody's on like
Just go, give us a share.
And
Right there.
we'll look at that.
This should be the job developed. No.
Great.
Backside of the screen. So it's click the little arrow next to the share one, not that one, not that one.
Like this right now.
This that one, yeah. No, it said, it's just somebody with multiple participants. Okay, you should be able to share now,
All
right?
right, try it now, Rob.
okay, bear with me one second. Yep. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, can you just zoom in on it just a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
please?
Is that better?
Yeah, there we go.
And maybe I can make it even larger. Hold on. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So so staff put together this hand-drawn sketch using the CROG assessor base maps, and we identified all the major features of the subject area. And I think the important observation that we made here is that SD2 is really a private there's a private collection system. It's not affiliated with any town drainage system. And it's really being fed primarily by 2 surface swales just north of 80 Lake Street and 84 Lake Street. And you can see they're depicted here in a yellow magic marker, swale 1 and swale 2. And then there's solid pipe from that are served by 3 manholes that lead up to the discharge point at SD2. And so and we still have one open item that we need to do just to kind of put a pin on this, these observations. We're going to be working with Mark and the DPW to open up the tops of these manholes next week, just to confirm what's going into these pipes. But we can see from the surface that these swales are discharging to the private, this private concrete pipe that is discharging at SD2. But we want to open up the coverage just to make sure there's no additional pipes coming into these manholes that we could have missed. We can't seem to find any other potential collection components to this system at this point in time. We think this reasonably represents what's out in the field, but we're going to open up those manholes just to make sure. That being said, we can tell you that based on our walkovers, that we're not identifying any problems with any of the septic systems. You can see there are basically 5 subject properties in proximity to this private collection system. As far as we can tell, based on visual observations walking over each of the properties, the systems appear not to be discharging to the surface. In fact, 80 Lake Road and 84 Lake Road, those systems are relatively new. 80 Lake is a relatively new house. I think it was built in the mid 2000s. I think Glenn said like 2011 or something like that. Glenn, Mark, today I can't exactly remember, but it was recently built, and the septic system's out front. And then conversely, correspondingly, at 84 Lake Road, that septic system, while it's in the back, is recently replaced about a decade ago. And modern septic systems today, properly installed, properly designed, properly maintained, are theoretically designed to last forever in a manner that is protective of the environment. And so those two, we can't find any issues with those two systems based on review the files and a walkover. Now, as you can imagine, what's missing from this property is topography, and the ground basically slopes from Lake Road down to the lake, as you might imagine. So those two swales are really designed to catch all the surface runoff from 80 Lake Road and from 84 Lake Road. There's actually a curb on Lake Road that collects all rainwater and storm water and goes into these 2 catch basins or 3 catch basins along the road, and then discharges down the right-of-way, the town right-of-way you can see off to the east there. So the watershed for this private distribution system appears to be largely defined by these 2 properties. Again, pending what we find after opening up the manholes for that distribution system. Now, moving on to the data that we collected, we just took one sample. I can't remember. I think we grabbed it in sometime in April. Let's see. I have the results right here. Bear with me here a second. Okay, though we collect them at the end of March. And it was not a rain event. It'd been relatively dry. But in those results, E. coli levels were very low, extremely low. It's something that we'd be looking for in any surface water quality. In the 3 sites that we sampled, they were either below 10 organisms per 100 mils or at 10 organisms per 100 mils. Also concurrently, the nutrient levels were also relatively low too. I think that they were even lower than some of them were just below detection limits for the laboratory. I don't want to get into those details right now. I believe you do have the results in your packet, and if you have any specific questions, I'd be glad to talk about them. But I think the bottom line message there is that the phosphate and the nitrogen levels, or nitrates and nitrites, were below what we'd consider background, at least at the time we took these samples for those sampling locations. So what does all this mean? Well, it means that we have not been able to identify an actionable, health hazard from the health district's perspective. Um, um, and I can only speculate at this point in time as to, given this information and the fact that TRC samples were grabbed during a precipitation event, that you had, at least in part, a scouring and then a scouring of the watershed of fecal material from the surface ground of these two properties. I think there may be pets on the property. And it's hard to say what the property owners are doing with fecal material with those pets. And again, the elevated the nutrient levels, which I think may have been above background in TRC's level. Again, I suppose it's plausible there may be some septic system influence, possibly. It's hard to say, but again, given our observations and our records, I would say that it's an incremental influence at worst, and it's not against anything that would be actionable by the health district. As far as we can tell, these systems are in compliance. So this basically leads us to believe that this appears to be what we would kind of characterize as a non-point source issue, at least based on this information. Other information could pop up. It's hard to say. It's hard to say at this point. As I said, we still have, we still need to kind of open up the manholes just to confirm some of these observations we're making now, or to see if there's other pipes coming into these manholes that we need to investigate further. And when we do open up those manholes, if it generates more questions, then we'll certainly follow up on those to see what's going on. So that kind of summarizes our observations and our activities to date, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you may have or comments.
Other than the manholes, are there possibilities that pipes could be joining at other junctures? And would it make sense to run a camera down that pipe to investigate what may be there? It is a low area all along there. I'm sure that there are potentially any number of curtain drains or otherwise to drain things or sub pumps or what have you. And it would be good to, document with a camera whether somebody has punched a hole in somewhere else along that line without a manhole.
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that. I think I'd be, more concerned if at least in the sampling that in the samples we had analyzed at the state laboratory, indicated potential wastewater signature of some sort, then and we were unable to find any point source then at that point I'd say, okay, we still have to do some more thorough investigation here and then and maybe isolate parts of that pipe to figure out, where's that contaminated water feeding into this private drainage system. But in the absence of data to suggest, at least during, during our period, again, it's one data point. I think one of the things what's going to come out of this is that additional monitoring is I think is warranted. But my sense is, and I'm interested in what TRC thinks about this, is that, in the absence of a actual point source or data during dry conditions, which are suggestive of, wastewater, which could contaminate wastewater, then I think this may be a non-point source issue. And if it's non-point source, then running a camera down the pipe's not gonna generate any additional helpful data. But I think that, I think that's where we're at on this point.
Carl, do you have any comments?
Yeah, is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yeah,
Should be, yeah, good. Rob, do you wanna disconnect?
Yeah, sure.
your-
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rob. So can you folks see that okay?
No, we see you.
We see
You see me? I must have picked the wrong screen. How about now?
There you go.
All
Yeah.
right. Now you don't have to look at me. So, we're coming at this, we came at this from some stormwater assessment that we did in the spring of 2024 initially. And that work didn't include any bacterial work. It was just, we went out and sampled as many of the storm drains as we could. And you can see 2 Erdoney Road right here had phosphorus of nearly 0.3, which is very, very high. And nitrogen was over 2, which anything over 1 generally indicates some sort of source, not natural, not background. It could be dog waste, it could be goose waste, it could be raccoon waste, or it could be human waste. We don't know. What we're seeing though is a lot of high numbers, but 2 Erdoney Road came out very high. So then we went back and did some sampling, minimize that. And we had, this sampling was this is the results that we got when we went back and sampled in November and December.
Could you
Hello?
zoom in on that? Yeah, could you zoom in on that, please? It's hard to see.
Yeah, sorry about that. Lots of white. There you go. Can you see that?
That's better, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so these numbers, again, were taken during a storm event. I think the first one was 3/4 of an inch and the second one was an inch, or I might have those switched, but sizable storm events. And we're getting inputs into 2 Erdoney Road's storm drain outlet that are very, very high. And even when we went out into the middle of the cove there and sampled, we're still showing, surprisingly here, you've got a big number with nothing in the cove. Later on, we have a lower number, but a higher number in the cove. Some of that is due to the discrepancy in how they count a bacterial plate. But, in contrast, Woodland Terrace was sampled and had no problems during this same storm event. The inlet had similar high levels, not super high during November, but very high during December. So we're seeing bacterial problems, and that could be wildlife, it could be pets, pet waste, geese, etc. We don't know. The proposal we prepared for folks included testing of a range of things. One of the key ones was additional testing during storm events of these storm drains to try to get a better sense of what kind of numbers we're getting and how frequently they're exceeding the threshold. The threshold, by the way, for reference, is 235 for swimming, and for non-designated swimming areas, anything over 410 is considered problematic. So the data we're seeing is above that 410 threshold. And so we had suggested bacterial source tracking, which isn't putting pipes and sending cameras up a drain. It's actually putting collecting samples and sending them off for ribotyping analysis, which is you look at the DNA of the bacteria that you're pulling out, and they're able to correlate that with the different DNAs of the E. coli from different species of organisms. So goose bacteria look different than cow bacteria or dog bacteria. And so they're able to then rule out, in this case, it might be we rule out human, given the data that Rob's showing that there's no influence or connections with waste, unless there's humans putting non-point source pollution somewhere on their plots. So that's the benefit of that bacterial source tracking, and it will give us a sense of how do we approach the management of these private properties? Do we go after the dog waste and do some education within the watershed? And it wouldn't be just this property, it would be sort of a more broadly based educational program targeting pet waste management, and emphasizing the importance of it, and having data in your pocket that show how these mismanagement of pet waste is impacting lake water quality and swimmability is a useful tool when you're educating folks. But it could be geese, and that's a different management effort. It's managing geese and geese access to people's properties becomes more of a fencing issue and a discouragement issue, or a putting up buffers along the shoreline to keep geese from accessing mowed lawns and things like that. So different types of management, but without knowing what we're getting hits for, you're just sort of guessing. The fact that we're getting these hits in the summer as well as later in the November and December makes me think it's not likely to be geese, just because when they come there, you get big numbers and then they're gone in the fall, and by December you shouldn't be getting high numbers, but we still are. Doesn't mean it's not possible. I don't know how the drainage in this area works as far as how long it takes for the geese, if there were geese waste, how long does it take to get off of people's properties and down through the storm drain, through that swale? I don't know. But the pet waste is something that if people are tossing it into that swale area, or they're just not managing it all and it eventually runs off into the swale, the bacterial source tracking would say, look, we're getting hits of dog waste. Pretty easy to then figure out how to best address that. Or you skip the testing and just tell people that's the problem and we need to fix it, because it is educating folks in the watershed about proper pest waste management will be useful. The problem is if you get people to adopt it, generally watershed wide, they find that the adoption and understanding of the issue and the willingness to change behavior is at the 5 to 10% rate by homeowners. So, you could probably fix the storm drain at SD2 by educating the 5 or 6 homeowners that have properties right in that area. And if they are all willing to participate, you might fix that area and make it so that it's safe to swim in the area adjacent to it. So beyond that, I don't know what's yeah, go ahead.
It's Muffy Carter. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. We have data that don't align, but they were sampled differently. So it seems to me the first step would be for Rob to go back and sample during a storm event. And see if he gets those same high E. coli readings that
Well,
you got.
Yeah, I
Carl.
think Rob pointed out accurately, what they're looking for is storm drain inputs to septic inputs to a storm drain system. And the best time to go out and do that is during dry weather, when you don't have the influence of storm water flowing through. So he's going out finding and seeing if there are leaks during dry weather and discharges occurring during a dry weather period. And if they are, his numbers should have been even higher than mine because the stormwater would only dilute human septic inputs. So, I think what Rob did is really helpful to our understanding of what the issues are, and it would make me say we probably can skip or delay the need for any pipe surveys at this point. I think Rob's idea of pulling the manhole covers and seeing if there are any other hookups to the system that are there. There could be sump pumps or something else that people are, that aren't operating all the time, that when they do pump them, they have a discharge into that pipe. I don't know. But even that, you wouldn't think it would be full of bacteria necessarily. So I don't know if we're getting ahead of things or not, but I think Rob's data combined with our data tell you you've got issues there, and the issues aren't as likely to be related to septic system, illegally hooked up septic systems.
Yeah, you have two more questions, either one.
Bob Howell, question for probably Rob. You stated that number 80 and 84 Lake Road, the septic systems were fine. But did you analyze number 2, Erdoney, 82 Lake and 78 Lake? Those are quite close. Those are to the north side of those swales.
Correct.
Right.
Right on.
And let's see. The
Yeah, those
answer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. So the answer to that is yes. We again, we looked at our records for what's there in terms of septic systems, and we do have records of the septic system locations, at least roughly speaking, and installation for, I believe, a couple of them. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which ones we have really accurate records for, and which I think one of them records are pretty old, but still provide us reasonable indication of what's there. And again, surface walkover didn't identify any potential surface discharge. So I think it's also important to note that just 82 Lakeview's occupied, 78 and I think 2 Erdoney, or 78's been unoccupied for some time. Exactly how long, I don't know. And 2 I think has been intermittently occupied, but it certainly wasn't occupied during our efforts to.
I'm not sure that's correct. I believe 78 is occupied. I don't think 82 is occupied. And certainly number 2 is occupied.
Well, I was there today, and a gentleman, drove down the driveway and into 82, and got out of his car and walked into number 82. And
those are seasonal cottages. That's a seasonal cottage.
So there's evidence that it was occupied over the winter. Staff observed 82 appear.
Number 2 Erdoney is usually occupied 12 months a year. It's a rental. Number 82 is a seasonal rental, and number 78 is a full-time residence. Single person, I believe.
So the zoning requirements notwithstanding, our observations are that the 2 and 78 have been unoccupied this past winter, but that 82 was. Well, now with that said, again, if we see any other inputs in those manholes that may be suggestive of something coming from 82 or 78, then we'll certainly investigate that further.
Yeah, we got another question here?
Sure.
Well, it seems to me combining, the two more study is definitely in order, but the DNA testing, I think, would be very valuable to us to arm us with information about what species it is, because I do think, and I guess we're gonna wanna talk about septic systems, but I do think we should be encouraging a strong education system, re-education system regarding septic, and if it is pet waste, which people nominally probably don't think about, we need to do that, and I would hope that we would get higher compliance than what has been suggested, because the people around the lake do wanna have good quality, and if we're showing them that if we can show us simply 3 dogs or something like that caused a non-swimmable condition, that's a wake-up call.
Well, and also if you have seasonal rentals and rental properties, they are not part of the routine education. And so those homeowners really should spend a little time educating their occupants not to leave the pet waste in the property if they're allowing dogs in the rentals. You know, that might be, you know, a visiting family with a dog or two. Help.
Yeah, because we need data. So,
Excuse me.
sorry, we had a question here.
Mary, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the proposal Henry has just suggested has already passed by the BOS. And that funding was part of it.
So you have the funding, you just need to
Just so
execute it if
everyone
you wish.
Correct.
We just wanted to get a thorough analysis from the health district to have this meeting we're having right now.
Correct.
enough.
Jake Block, 24 Doubleday Road. My question was for Rob. Did you check out any other septic systems or just those like the 6 mentioned?
We did
Oh,
not go in, we did not delve deeply into septics from the other properties. Our focus was on the collection system, which results in the discharge at SD2. And to the best of our ability, the only septic systems in proximity to this collection system were those 5 properties. We weren't seeing any kind of potential linkage or potential either surface or subsurface linkage to any of the other properties. We did look across the street because you can see that there is a, or you can't see from the map I showed you, but there is a catch basin on the snow shelf just south of Lake Road, which collects surface water off a large field across the street. There's a very large property and a relatively large dwelling that looks to be well kept. We did not see any evidence of actual agricultural activity on that property, even though it obviously historically was a farm at one point. But it seems to be an open fallow field. Again, with no evidence of any kind of livestock or anything of that nature. And again, it you know, the water coming off of that field and flowing through the stone wall along the road there either goes into that catch basin or over the curb into the road, and where it's captured by the road's drainage system because the road is curbed. And so nothing from the south side of Lake Road is getting past those curbs and into, from what we can tell anyway, getting into the collection system for SD2.
Yeah, Rob, Mary and I own that property and you're right, you're correct. We've stopped, it used to be hay fields. It was a sheep farm before we owned the property. And we've stopped doing anything there because to grow hay, it needs to be reseeded. And the proposal was to put chicken manure on it, and that didn't strike us as a particularly great idea, given the location, so It is fallow at this point. We're trying to figure out what we might be able to do with it, but setting that aside. There's a big storm drain, just the street side of the stone wall there that we check regularly.
Yep.
Had my nephew helped me remove the grate to pull all the logs, and it's
Yep.
unbelievable what gets in there and goes
Sure.
through there. It's remarkable. And it flows very heavily in the spring, and the other thing that happens is from way up on Homestead. That water in a big rain event comes right down the road and. So it's catching water, not just from coming off our property, but from way up the hill there,
Up the road.
up the road.
Yeah.
rather.
Occasionally it catches water. Sometimes it goes down somebody's driveway and washes it out.
Yes,
Several times that's happened,
Right,
right, so it's a complicated area, I would say, but your points are well taken.
I think, I don't know, I'd like to authorize, the report to continue with the DNA testing. Make a motion to do that.
Okay, do you have a motion? Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. Very. All right,
I don't think any motions needed, but we can coordinate Rob and Carl and continue to share their data.
yeah, that's great.
So we need to start Carl here for,
Yep.
Yes.
for the test.
Move on.
All right, thank you.
I guess we'll be in touch, Carl.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Thanks, Rob. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys, really appreciate it.
Yep.
Rob, if you have a few more minutes, there was to be a second discussion on septic tanks in general. In the wetlands area or on, which does include wetlands, obviously does include immediate area of the lakefront. There have been over a number of years, several discussions with no actions taken in regards to town ordinances, pump out, town ordinances for testing septic systems, dye testing. And wondered your thoughts and opinions in the next few minutes, if you could just give us your overview, because that's something that I think that we have to start to address. It was in our
Sure.
water management plan as of 2000.
Sure. So I have a kind of a couple thoughts on that, on this issue. So I think my overarching thought is I feel like the health district does a pretty good job of protecting the watershed and the potential problems with septic systems as they may potentially impact water quality in your lake. The existing public health code already has a number of, I think, important provisions in it, which are protective of this situation. In particular, there's provisions on the public health code which require all building projects, not just within the watershed, but anywhere in town, to come across our desks for review for compliance with the public health code. And so that includes any additions, decks, large sheds, any proposed expansion in use. And there's a particular section of the public health code we call B100, it's short for a much longer number, which basically stipulates that a property owner cannot expand the use of the property, their existing property, without first demonstrating upfront that the existing carrying capacity of the property can handle in environmentally friendly manner, in a manner that's protective of surface water quality, environmental health, before such project is approved for construction. And that, again, that's anything. That's a deck, a shed. And we're very serious about enforcing that provision in the public health code at the health district. If somebody's proposing a project which we feel unduly expands the use of a property and then therefore potentially could find themselves challenged with being able for either the existing system of handling what could be a potential increase in the volume of sewage, or if they're unable to demonstrate that that they could install a septic system that could in fact handle the proposed increase in sewage in a manner that's in compliance, then we wouldn't approve the project. And when I say in compliance, the current standards, modern standards in today's modern public health code are very conservative. A septic system, which is properly installed, properly maintained, and properly designed, technically it should last forever. Septic systems no longer are considered to have a finite life to them. Old ones do, because they were all constructed prior to modern standards. Now, there are a number of factors in there I just identified, right? Properly designed, properly installed, most importantly, properly maintained. But it's not hard to maintain a septic system. Just don't flush bad stuff down the toilet and pump the septic tank every few years. So you know, I feel the health district does a pretty good job of at least for our part and for our role in this, in making sure that any human waste is handled in a manner which is protective of lake water quality and groundwater quality. Now, there are exceptions, I should say. You know, if somebody has an existing dwelling and the septic system's failing, and there's not enough space on the property because it's an older non-conforming lot, then we will grant exceptions to permit the installation of that repair. But you can be assured that whatever repair we approve is going to maximize and optimize the volume of sewage it'll be able to obtain. And then we'll document in the record restrictions to the capacity of that septic system because of the limits of the property. I also might want to say that, you know, my office has reviewed, you know, proposed pumping ordinances in the past for the town of Columbia over the years. And while I certainly recognize that that there is, you know, that Columbia Lake is an essential resource and an extremely valuable resource to the community, and there is a very strong interest to protect it, and totally recognize and understand that. I feel like, though, the health district does a pretty good job of supporting that mission, and will continue to do so moving forward.
Kristen Loft, 24 Doubleday Road. Olivia's on the call. She's a friend of mine. She's a realtor in town, and she was just wanted me to say, because she couldn't raise her hand, that Seven Donny has a failed septic system and has, I guess, for 6 years. It's completely failed. It's every leach field's entirely full and non-functioning, and they haven't pulled permits to fix it.
Okay, thank you. And that, well, and I think that's bringing up.
So that brings up an important point. I'm glad you mentioned that. Because of what I just stated in terms of even our keen interest in protecting groundwater quality and surface water quality in this important community asset, when somebody does report to us concern about an existing septic system, we jump on it. So you can be assured we'll be out there, you know, this week looking at Seven Aderney to see what's going on. Well, this is the first time we've heard of it. This first time my office has heard of it. Yeah. And so I can talk with staff to see maybe they've already heard about it and have already investigated to see if that is in fact the case. But if there was a problem that we have observed as a result of investigation, then we would, you know, obviously we're the local public health authority. If we see a violation, we have the authority to compel compliance.
Rob, do you recommend?
Well, wait a minute. I think-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bob had a question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. I have a lot of confidence in your agency in dealing with new construction. But my concern is there are about 200 plus houses around the lake or within the watershed. 50% of which were probably built 40 to 50 years ago and have septic systems that were not designed by anybody. I mean, before I replaced mine was a 50-gallon steel drum with holes drilled in it.
Right.
So, I think we need to be more proactive than reactive with some of the existing septic systems, the older systems. And certainly an inspection program or a pump out program or whatever, I think is warranted. We've talked about this in the past. It's gone, it was discussed years ago, it went away, it was discussed again, it went away. I think we really need to be more proactive about this. Because we know we're at a tipping point, the phosphorus going into the lake. So one of the sources certainly could be failed septic system. We've got some very, very small lots. You know, they're obviously non-conforming, but we've got lots that are 1/10 of an acre.
Yeah.
There's lots of rock. It's impossible to put new septic systems in that would meet current standards. And yes, I know you work with homeowners to compromise, but still, I think we need to develop a program. We've got it down as one of our committee reports. And the watershed management plan. I think we need to expand this. And I think some input from Eastern Highlands would be good. But again, the focus should be on the older systems. The newer systems are fine. We're not worried about those, because he's taking care of those. It's the older systems that I think we really need to focus on. Rob?
If I may respond, and I agree with everything you just said. Older systems can be a challenge for some homeowners, and as I said, and you're correct, we are reactive in that if one of those older systems are problematic, we go out there only after somebody expresses a concern or complaint about it, and then, as you said, work with the homeowner. I just want to point something out, and this is just the reality of resources, and this is and as I said, we have reviewed past ordinances, proposed ordinance from the Humboldt, Columbia in the past. I've been health director for a long time, so I can recall at least 2 rounds of ordinances my office has reviewed, and we'll have absolutely no problem reviewing a third if you want to propose it. We'll be glad to review and provide comments. But I think I just want to set expectations up front that the health district doesn't have the resources to support this such an initiative. We're already putting all of our marbles into the current enforcement of the Connecticut Public Health Code. So this would be essentially a solely Town of Columbia initiative.
Yep.
Is there a model ordinance anywhere that you could point to that would be helpful as a starting point?
Well, I could probably dig up the ones from you guys. We looked at years ago if you want.
No, well, we can find those too, but
Yeah.
are obviously.
Yeah, because
Yeah. It's why they didn't cut the pass, so I was wondering whether there.
I mean, there are other communities around the state that I think have existing ordinances. It wouldn't be hard to track them down. We could do
But
that for
there's
you.
no national code draft ordinance or anything like that.
Maybe but I'm not aware.
Okay.
I think start with the state. Keep running around the state. Okay.
Municipalities with lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are other communities that do have, active ordinances with, resources that are deployed for enforcement and management.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we let Rob go? All right, well, thank you for your time. We greatly appreciate your feedback, and certainly if we see anything, we will say something.
Good, excellent.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. We did. And we did.
Yep, you did.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right, we're an hour in here, how do we laser focus on, other topics? I guess I'd like to go through, welcome audience of citizens, you could, just please state your name and your address, and if you have any business for the board tonight.
John Dilworth, 8 Oakville Woodland Terrace. Yeah, it's observing, listening.
Great, thank you, welcome.
Carol Zeiler, 63 Whitney Road, asking for permission for a mooring off of my right.
Okay, we'll have a permit review, section coming up, we can talk about them.
And on the page, just.
Thanks,
Frank Gifford, 16 of Verdone Road, present.
thank you,
Jason Rico, 102 Lake Road, just observe.
welcome,
James Lock, 24 Doubleday Road, here to contribute when I can.
thank you, appreciate it,
Kristen Lock, more Doubleday Road, just observing.
great, thank you.
Jeff Morrison, 14 Columbia Landing. I'm actually here to bring up some concerns that I have in regards to for the sake of the lake program and protection of invasive species. Reviewed several, gone back a couple of years now with the minutes, and Steve Everett was here in January of this year. Last April, there was a significant discussion about the key system being abused and keys being passed around and boats that were over horsepower being allowed onto the lake and improper inspections. And this year it was expressed that, those inspections were gonna be strictly enforced. And during numerous conversations that I've had, not with Steve Everett, but also with the board of selectmen, and going back to the original, when the gate was put in 2017, it was assured to myself and a lot of the town residents that there are no boats, motorized boats being launched from private property. Within the last 2 weeks, it's been identified 2 boats have been launched from private property, motorized boats. One of them is currently unregistered and not inspected. Another one was registered, but not inspected, and was used to tow another boat back to their residence. This kind of defeats the whole purpose of motorboats supposedly, supposed to be launched at boat ramp. Okay, they're supposed to be inspected, checked for invasive species prior to the boat going in. That's part of the whole inspection sticker system. At least that's the way I've read it and I've understood it, and a lot of other town residents have understood it. So, it's also come to my attention that both these boats are owned and operated by members of this board.
Oh, yeah, the one of them is mine,
Yes,
which is unregistered and hasn't been inspected and hasn't touched the water since the water came up. It was never left the lake. So, wait a minute. It never left the lake and it was used for the geese patrol. So it's never left. So therefore, it's never really been, and I do have the registration for it, but I haven't used it since the water came up, so.
So the Marine Patrol that has actually documented it on several different occasions being operated on the water.
It has not been,
And
it has,
have photos of chasing the geese
yeah.
is not appropriate then.
Well, wait a
My question was, sir,
hold
my
on,
question-
hold on. I'm
excuse me,
going to speak.
I thought this was the public forum.
It is the public forum, but you're accusing me of something and I'm going to address it.
Okay,
When it was being operated, it was registered and inspected prior to the season.
is it registered and has it been inspected for the 2025,
It
2026?
is registered, but it hasn't touched the water, so therefore it has not been inspected.
So you're saying that the photographs that the Marine Patrol took are actually fraudulent?
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Walters, I would like to address this and actually request an open investigation as to whether the chairperson has lied.
it has not been used to my knowledge. It has been
Well,
used
you
by
just
Lake
said that it
Patrol,
hasn't been used.
not by me.
Let's bring
Yeah.
It's been on the boat twice, it's been on the water twice.
We've already addressed
By Goose Patrol, by Goose Patrol.
Yeah, and my concern here, sir, is how is it legal to have an unregistered vessel
It's not-
on a
it's-
waterway?
It was
How are you
registered
gonna
at
drive
the
an
time.
unregistered motor vehicle just in Columbia,
It
but
was,
not in any other
it
town?
was registered at the time.
It's not registered right now, and it hasn't
It is-
been on
it
the
is
water for the last
registered.
2 weeks.
It is registered.
We're just repeating ourselves. Now.
Yeah,
Let's move along.
Yes.
Let's move on.
it's registered. I haven't used it, so I haven't put the sticker on.
Okay. Yeah, two questions.
Speaking for the committee that drafted the ordinances,
Yeah.
one of the things that we were challenged with addressing was the fact that until we had this launch ordinance that is coming up for public hearing, there was no requirement that all motorboats be
That-
launched
It
from.
never has been.
Correct.
Who told you that?
From the.
The first selectman, Steve Everett, made that
He's
comment in
mistaken.
2017,
It's
and
okay.
every single year, every single board of selectmen member every year has since said that.
They're mistaken.
Okay,
Correct.
so now is the big issue that was originally brought up with the key system,
Which
so
is
correctly, you guys wanna point the finger at Fisherman, there's 18 keys, you gotta look at your own house.
Listen, it's a
Relax.
much different thing if you're taking a boat from.
How do I know your boat hasn't left your
But the
property?
point is, wait a minute, we're going back to where we
You
were.
know, I can show you
You
all the
can put it
video.
up to what
Would
you
you
hold on.
like to come over, I'll give you access, you and I can go through months of
Guys,
video where I can show you the boat hasn't been
Let's
launched.
let's try this thing under
You
control.
know, but what does everybody else know? And this is the comment that I go back to the previous meetings, where you turn around and you point out every other town resident in here that you don't know them. But it's okay for you because
you know
you
what
know.
it is? The fact of the matter.
That's the problem.
The boat hasn't
Wait,
been
wait,
used.
Mike, let me talk. The fact of the matter is, there is no ordinance and never have been. If you have property on the lake, you can launch it. Now, the fact is, most people have stone walls and can't launch. But there are a few around the lake that have either a beach or an actual launch that can and potentially will be used. We can't stop them from that, right? The second thing is, if they do launch like that, that's the reason for the boat patrol, because that's when you should stop them. We're putting stickers on both sides of boats now for just that purpose. So you'll be able to notice if a boat is not inspected, you'll be able to pull them over politely, ask them if they've been inspected. If they haven't, inspect them. If they don't pass, you'd respectfully ask them to remove the boat from the lake. And
Or
that
stay
should
true.
be it.
Well, and let me add, there is in the current ordinance a requirement for people around the lake to do an AIS inspection. Now, I will say that I've talked at these meetings before, that we've let that go lapse. And one of the things we've tightened in the new ordinance is to require education and to have a sticker program so that we can regulate and educate and enforce more about launches that are taking place other than at the beach. But there has been requirements, they have been met by a number of people, but there are a number of people, probably more out of ignorance than not, that haven't been doing it. And we've got to clean up the act around the lake, and that's an acknowledged point.
Right.
Yeah.
99% of the people that are doing it illegally or whatever, did it by accident, or they just don't know. There are a few, obviously, that, and hopefully we'll catch them. That's the reason for the double sticker. We never had double stickers before. And anybody that didn't want to be caught always stayed to the certain side of the boat patrol. That's why we changed it. But they absolutely can get on the water off of their property. And now, you know, it's just a mistake that the board must have made. I've never heard anybody state that.
So my point is that we're supposed to be inspecting motorized vessels for invasive species. It's supposed to go through a boat launch, it's supposed to be inspected by a town official or marine patrol or the rec department or the assistant to the recreation department. We've already discussed at multiple meetings about the education process for lakefront residents. When town residents secure a key for off-hours access, they have to take a test, they have to review the current standards for DEP, and they have to pass that test with 100%. Or they're not gonna get their key. Every time that I've taken the test, they never gave it to me unless I had a heart. Okay? And I've had the key several years. So my issue is that you have 24 keys that went out last year. Those people were educated about it, but you still have 166 properties with lakefront residents. Some of those have keys and are certified with the yearly updates and education. But what about the rest of them? Okay,
That's
and
what
they're
the
launching
ordinance
vessels
is.
that don't have the current updated standards, but you're gonna hold everybody else accountable. Okay, my point here is why does every other town resident have to play by these rules? But just because you have waterfront property doesn't mean that you have to. You can launch whatever you want.
First of all, that's not a correct statement.
Is it,
Because you
how
have
is that
lakefront
not a correct
property.
statement?
Because when you own property, we can't control what they do on that property.
You can control your property.
I can control my property, but you can't control my property.
Mr. Nazo can control his property, Mr. Beck can control his
And
property.
99% of the people, you're always gonna get a few people that might try to break the law or try to do something, but that's not the normal. You're
So
not
my
talking about-
point is that Mr. Nazo has an unregistered vessel,
It is registered,
it doesn't have the current registration sticker on it.
okay, but it's sitting out of the water right now.
Okay, so you can drive around a car without your registration on it and not get a ticket.
But if it's sitting in my driveway, I'm not breaking the
No,
law.
you're not, because it's not on the water.
It's neither is my boat.
It has been on the water.
No, it hasn't.
It has been
Not
documented. that it has
since,
been on
not
the
since,
water.
not since
So
not
how
since
is
the
it that?
registration ran out, has it been used?
How can an LMAC board member who is advising the Board of Selectmen to have these rules and enact these ordinances when he can't even follow them himself? And same
The
thing with.
boat hasn't been used. You're making a false
I
accusation.
have the documents with the Marine Patrol.
When was it used? Tell me
Within the
when it was
last
used.
2 weeks.
There is no ordinance that
has not.
says you can't launch over your own property. There's no ordinance.
Okay, that's fine. It's still unregistered and it's still not inspected.
I gotta
It's
get
supposed to
registered
be,
in my
it's
yard.
supposed to be inspected.
You gotta go in my yard, I got.
I'm not gonna come into your yard, you come down to the launch and be inspected.
But you know, like, registration down, because that's understood. So comments like that, well, why do the lakefront,
Please.
why do the lakefront owners not have to follow the
Point of
rules?
order,
That's
point
not
of
true
order,
at all.
please.
When you say stuff like that, all it does is divide.
It's a
lakefront-
perfect, I have two examples here.
Jim, Jeff. Let's tone it down. Let's have civil discourse. We hear your issue. We truly believe, and the Board of Selectmen also are moving forward with the new town ordinance, that we are addressing these things. Steve Everett asked you, Jeff, for solutions. Please bring solutions, because we've heard these things now at 3 different meetings. I think it's time to move on.
And when you have data, you come to me if you
I
want to
think it's
do
time.
it.
Well, I do wanna move one point, and that is, at the present point in time, not only are boats capable of being launched anywhere, and we're changing that with the new access ordinance, but also non-motorized watercraft do not need a sticker at the present time. They will require a sticker under the new ordinance, but there is no requirement for a sticker. The stickers, and if you look at the inspection sheet that we gave to Marine Patrol for this year, it lists stickers under the motorized motorboats. And the non-motorized watercraft have, if they're launched from the beach, have to go through an AIS inspection. Appropriate. They should also be going through an AIS inspection at all private properties as part of the present ordinance. Each owner of the property is supposed to be doing it. And that is where the old ordinance was weak, and we're strengthening it so that when the new ordinance is in, that will not occur, and people will also be notified that they can't scofflaw it because of the fact there's an education requirement and there's a fine requirement if it continues to be violated.
Is there a size to that? Like, you
There
have an
is
8-foot, paddle boat, you want that inspected?
any boat, but there is also part of the ordinance that does preserve the fact if that boat has only been on Columbia Lake and has not gone anywhere else, then the owner needs to only do the inspection when it has been on another body of
How about like a
water.
paddle? Just for my own, any area.
Any-
Stand up,
Any-
any that as well.
Paddle.
That's not considered a boat.
That's the
Yes, it
solution,
is.
that's we as LMAC unanimously.
Yeah, well,
recommend.
I get that. I just don't remember the.
Because it could be-
Considered vessels, you're supposed to have it life preserver that you use it.
Yes, that's right.
So this might come into play here. I have a pedal boat that I bought from the Collards on Columbia Lake. And I live on 63 Whitney. And so I brought the boat home. It's a pedal boat, it's one of those Pelican pedal boats.
Sure.
I cleaned it up really good. It was, it was grimy, look this, it's been sitting in the sun. I have it covered. I have a right of way off of 87. Which I think Phil sent me pictures of. And there's a few people that have access to that right of way to the lake. Opposite pole, 128, telephone pole, but I think it's in between 163, Route 87. I tried to figure out who owned that parcel, but it's from Landmark Realty. And I think they own that B&B. That's for some of the neighbors. This is what the neighbors are telling me. So I contacted one or the other on either side. They say, well, that's the bed and breakfast, so I don't know if it's a rental or what it is, but. There is a canoe there off on the side and there's some chairs, but I wanna be able to put the pedal boat into the water for the summer. I can get the pedal boat there, I don't wanna buy a trailer or have, be worried about going back and forth, on 97 just to launch, but there's a mooring there. There's a little mooring with a thing, I'd like to be able to put the,
Is it a question you wanna know if you can put there?
yeah, I'm just trying to find out
Oh,
if they
okay,
can do that.
yeah, so that's your mooring request.
But yeah, in mooring request, we have to take up under an application and we have special concerns about right of
We
ways.
would definitely, we'll take that up and.
So you have to complete an application.
But it's $100 for a mooring application?
No, not for the town mooring.
Not for Elda.
No, it's right.
No, that's a town mooring.
Town moorings are $100. If you have your own mooring right away, it's already there.
Well, well,
No.
it's, you gotta be careful, is it?
Fill out an
It's
application.
gotta legally be there.
But again, when she makes her application, it'll say whether it's been there for
Right.
how long, it's grandfathered in, that type of thing. Then we can explain it to you one-on-one.
Cheryl, can you give me your email address?
Yeah.
The better availability.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, we'll get it all.
Interesting meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I'm hearing Jeff's, questions and the point, and as the guy kind of in charge of the Goose Patrol over the winter time, he does make a point of, when does the town registration end versus the stickers on the boat, which I believe end the end of April. I'm not sure, I'm looking through my paperwork from a,
Yes.
state perspective, right? So it might be something we want to be sure of so that when the new season comes up, we're trying to make sure we got all the boats registered in time. But through the Geese Patrol, the winter time season, when we're launching the aluminum boats to try to get rid of the geese, we do need to be conscious that they're all registered correctly, right? And that there's no town, the town stickers, there's no real end date till the next season, is there? And so in May 1, when the new town season starts, we need a new town sticker, but the state sticker allows us to use the boats on the lake throughout the winter up until the springtime when we get our new stickers, right? So I just kind of wanted to clarify that through the winter time when we were out doing the Geese Patrol, that we were legal, but maybe we need to have the town allow past the end of the fall, the end of the season. I'm just throwing that out there. Just to make sure that we're all in sync with the state time and the town time.
I think that's a good point. We might want to tighten the ordinance before the selectmen adopt it, or they can do it. But in general, we've always treated it that the sticker from the year before lasts as long as the state sticker does.
Registration.
Right, that was my
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
And the inspection,
That's been the
yeah,
rule of, unspoken rule, but,
Yeah.
it should be codified so it's clear.
yeah,
Yeah, and then the only other thing I wanted to say is the new regs that we've been working on, ordinances, with the self-inspection should help with the confusion of the self-inspection of the boats, you know, over the winter time when we're launching from your shoreline or a raft or something like that, that they have not left the lake and, you know, that we are in compliance. That's what we've been doing with Goose Patrol, but it hasn't been officially codified to state that. So, you know, I appreciate Jeff bringing up the point of making sure that we're all following the rules. We have, but you know, I appreciate his input. So I wanted to say.
All right. Any permit reviews?
One, the Majeski, dock that was put into the lake without any applications has been, replaced with a dock that is now within specs of 200 square feet, or 100 square feet.
This is on, Route 87.
This is on Route 87, and Wetlands has asked LMAC to approve or not, because Wetlands doesn't want to move forward unless LMAC approves or not the dock that was put in. We do have an application. I did do a site visit. It is about 97 square feet. The only issue, and I think I would suggest LMAC approve it with a warning as to how they dock their boat, because there's a T that potentially could impact on a swim area. And I think if we just send them a warning, as well as a second warning that any future will require, any future repairs to their walls or docks will require permits, and send them the construction guidelines. I just think they didn't do it, we can't enforce, we can't penalize.
Well, did they, is it, the only remaining issue, right, is the fact with that T that is within, the end of the T is within 25 feet of the neighbor, is
The
that?
T is 22 feet from the neighbor's property instead of 25 feet.
Did the neighbor approve that or okay that?
No, the neighbor is concerned about the safety of the swimming area.
Oh, it's his neighbors.
Hmm?
Gotcha, I gotcha.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah,
Mary, isn't that the one with the raft? They have a raft to the left of their house? No, they have a large concrete dock that they currently are not using because they feel it's in disrepair and dangerous.
structurally, they claim
So-
structurally.
Yes, structurally, we recommend
Dr. Chase's house?
Yes,
Yes.
Majeski and
yeah,
David Fuchs.
Alright, so
it was formerly
it's a really
changed.
big piece of property.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
small.
Yeah, the other side of
Very
the,
small, but the lakefront is 100.
the other side of this, of the cement dock, there's a lot of footage. They could easily move the dock to the other
So the
side.
house that's complaining is the new people
Correct,
that bought that house that
Yes.
burned down like years ago.
yes,
Richard.
and there's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
So either we tell them to move it to, they do have almost 170 feet of lake frontage, from what I remember, they have a huge, tiny lot.
That dock is just on legs. Like, you can take
Why
it-
would?
Is it an aluminum dock or is it Canadian?
But isn't it a
Global
float
dock,
Oh,
It's a floating plastic dock.
yeah, it could be easily moved. Move it,
move it,
move it.
Would they just slide the teal?
Yeah, you move it, it's like a T, yeah. That's what it-
25 feet. That's okay.
The neighbors.
because they're the dock at the seawall is 25 feet, the T is 22 feet.
Yeah, that's
If I move that T,
either move the T or move the dock. I mean, nothing can be with that. Just move the T a little bit. Especially if the neighbors is concerned, is concerned.
we've been sitting, not that we've been sitting on, we've been hemming and hawing about this for a bit, and I just think we need to reach a solution. Wetlands is taking 2 months and
Or do they wanna take down the cement here too?
That's not us, that's not us.
I have no idea.
Because that's falling apart, you know.
They're claiming that.
Yeah.
We actually recommended town engineer, and I gave them the
Yeah,
name to
Box.
engineers to come look at it, and they chose not to do that.
Cause they poured over another floor.
Let's
And
move
that's
on.
how the floor is cracking.
Letter to them? Are you gonna send a letter to them?
Well, I have to send a letter to the BOS,
Okay.
and the BOS has to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So-
Does everybody agree with that though?
Yeah.
Just-
Yes.
That's
A
fine.
motion to move the T onto their property to be 25 feet away from
Or to come up with
Second.
another.
Do we have a second?
Motion,
Wait.
or move the dock to the other side.
nothing within 25 feet, that's all.
Okay.
So-
Motion for 25 feet. That's-
Second, 25 feet, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any
Thank you.
opposed? Any abstentions? All
And
right,
again, it's for safety reasons.
Yes, absolutely.
Planning and zoning coordination.
So. We have a.
Excuse me, I gotta recuse myself from this.
Oh.
discussion because I'm on the
Of course, of course. So we attended the last,
You'll come back in when
I'm
we're.
just gonna sit in the audience.
good, we attended, several of us attended the last, planning and zoning commission meeting, which was a continuation of the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinances. And Henry was there, Noreen was there, Mary was there, Bob of course was there, Mike was there. So, it was very clear that there's, very little interest in doing the study that we propose to do, and lots of reasons why people will discount it if we do it, so. To our pleasant surprise, however, they're open to a compromise. And, so they would like us to come back to them, and their next meeting is June 9th with a proposal.
A simplified.
And they want, as Rick said, he'd like something elegant and its simplicity. So we, Noreen, Henry, Mary and I put together. It's in your packet, the last page. What we think are the three main points. We don't know that we'll win on all three. I think the really important one, and I think they're open to this, is to exclude the LA region for small farm animals. On properties that are smaller than 1 acre. And frankly, I think if that's all we end up with, I think that's great. It's a great outcome for us because it's not where we started with, but it's a heck of a lot better than where we're heading with this.
Right.
Henry raised a point. We tried to get clarity from the zoning officer today, which wasn't all that clear on. Pointing out in the very beginning of the zoning regulations, there's a section on issuing certificate of zoning compliance, and one of the things it says. That such a certificate is also required for any change, extension, or alteration in a use. So we might have some protection through that. That section of the ordinance. Mary tried to clarify today with the zoning officer, so if somebody decided to have chickens on their property, would that be a change in use? I think her answer to that was no.
Well, no, her answer was yes, if you're a small farm, no, if it's a backyard. But our zoning regulations don't address the backyard. So I responded to her asking, with the definitions as in the zoning plan, then you're saying all residents, and she has yet to respond.
Go ahead.
Yeah, from my perspective in suggesting that, I think it should be part of our proposed compromise. That, any change, that takes a property that is has no livestock on it, and puts livestock on it, that it needs a certificate of zoning compliance. It doesn't need to get into buildings or whatever unless they're gonna build a new barn or shed like that. They just have to be able to demonstrate under the new rules that they've got the best management practices for doing that. But without a certificate of zoning compliance, there's nobody checking in on it. It's the landowner deciding, oh, this is best practices, this is what I'm gonna do. And so I think that if you're, wherever you are in town, if you don't have livestock currently. And you're gonna put livestock on your property, whether it's a horse, a cow, or chickens or rabbits. Or swine, you should have to get a certificate of zoning compliance. So if somebody says, yes, great, best practices, go right ahead. And it also allows for therefore for monitoring later on, because if somebody gets an approval for 3 horses and later there's 10 horses. Well, then they need a new certificate of zoning compliance, and if they don't have it, they should come in and get it. Otherwise, there's no check or balance in this thing, the concept. Other than if the zoning enforcement officer takes it on his or herself to go out and look at it, or the State Department of Agriculture takes it upon themselves to come out and look at it. And those, we recognize only usually happens when there is an argument or some kind of dispute over the situation, and it would be best to head that off. Okay. Question?
That's a good point, Henry. But, Rick, I was at the meeting and Rick Nassif said elegant in its simplicity. And I think that is not elegant.
Well, it is elegant in its simplicity because it's not changing anything that's not already written.
It's already there, yeah, it's already in.
There, it's just agreeing on the interpretation of the existing words.
We're not rewriting
Yeah.
this, that's already.
Hold on, I think we had another comment.
I'm sorry. Pardon me, Jason Rico, 102 Lake Road. We're not changing the use of anything, right? Like even in the overlay, technically, that overlay land is still residential agriculture, so you're not actually. Like if I wanted to put animals, I have animals, so it's not a big deal for me. If I want to put animals on a property that didn't have animals on it, I do well within my rights to do that based on the map of the land use. Correct?
Yes.
Would you agree there?
Because of the amount of land you have, yes.
Well, no, but even if I had, I think in the definitions section of the regs, it says a small farm is. There's certain acreage limits,
Yeah.
and there's certain, like if you go to the matrix, but those are still, I'm within my right to
You
have.
have a right,
Yes,
but you
you
need a certificate of zoning
But
compliance.
you're not changing the use.
You're not,
correct?
well, you're changing the use if you haven't had an animal on it before.
No, it's still agricultural.
Well,
Yeah,
it's still residential land when you have a house on it, but you're gonna build a garage, you gotta go in and get a certificate of zoning, you made a change.
That's a building, though.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah, and,
respectfully, I disagree with.
and I respect that you differ, because I don't know, which is why we asked the question.
Yeah.
So when clarification on planner and or the zoning enforcement officer, it's a moot point to chat, other than we'll differ. I would like to suggest that we do have 3 proposals that we want to provide to planning and zoning, and that we segment them, because the first one is very elegant. It just says, change this to 1 acre in LA, that's all, and that language. This one is tricky. Other than keep it as it is, if that's the interpretation, if it's not. And then the third one is to retain 100 square feet for sheds or outbuildings in LA district only. 200 for anything out of
Can
LA.
you repeat that? I had, just repeat the last bit.
Oh, the third one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
That instead of going to a total of 200 square feet for an accessory building. Or shed or outbuilding, retain 120 square feet for sheds or outbuildings in LA district. So exempt the LA district.
From that change.
Yes,
There's environmental issues,
Yep.
there's not.
I just didn't have it.
That's,
So,
I was for having that thing apply to the whole LAR. I didn't realize we were talking yesterday to just restrict it to A. I think that it, and I brought it back up yesterday because I think it is important. And the reason is that in 2003, when we put the overlay zone in, there were compromises made at the town meeting in order to not stifle development and land use that went for saying we're only gonna look for 10% improvement of phosphate running off the land rather than 100%, but we're gonna have it be triggered by any change in use going forward or increase in use going forward. And so that meant that if you built anything, you were going to have to improve your property and improve
Nutrient allocation.
the nutrient allocation. So it was gonna happen sequentially rather than required to happen all at once for all properties.
Wait, are you specific to, what do you,
I'm talking about the 120
120
square feet.
LA only, or you're saying LA, LB, LC?
I'm saying it should be for the whole overlay zone, B and C. Because right now, it is for the whole overlay zone. And the reason is that it acts as a trigger. If you're gonna make a change to the property and you're going over the 120 square feet, which we allowed as a reasonable exception, so you can make a small shed. A 200 square foot building is basically a single car garage. And,
it's not gonna fly.
and,
I think we have to,
well, look, you can make your point, I can make my point, and then we're gonna.
I
vote on it.
respect that.
Okay,
Please
so
finish.
I'm
Please finish.
making my.
and then I'll give you Carl's one.
Well, Carl's point is, there's no difference between 120 and 200 in terms of. The phosphate runoff for that, I don't disagree with that. What I not wanting to give up is the trigger that brings more properties into compliance by getting 10% improvement.
Oh, I see what you're saying, you want, I hear what you're saying.
If you allow people to build if they were to build a 200 square foot now, they'd have to get a 10% improvement on their whole property, and that would benefit the lake. If you let them do the 200 instead of the 120, they only have to take care of the 200 or the 120. There's no further improvement this time. We've lost that trigger point.
You're talking about the nutrient allocation. plan.
Nutrient allocation thing. And so the whole nutrient allocation plan was set up so that it would be triggered sequentially as people came along and decided they wanted to do some kind of improvement, rather than require it to happen right away. And so I don't wanna give up that trigger by allowing for larger coverage areas.
Yeah, but we agreed at the 120 at one point and said nobody has to do the nutrient allocation.
We made that as a
And
one
all
time,
they're asking now is to expand it to 200
correct,
without the nutrient allocation plan.
Right.
but it's
So
it's
how
a,
is that going to have such an effect?
because we lose the trigger to bring everything within 10%, and it's a creeping thing. We went from losing 120 feet, and there've been a lot of properties that have made sheds that would have otherwise had to comply and would have brought more, would have cleaned up less phosphate going into the lake. We go to 200 feet, we're continuing
Keep rolling.
the same process.
Yeah,
Let's keep going this.
the only thing I heard, and others were there, they can comment on this. What, any openness at all is excluding A, not B and C.
Not being said.
Nobody's even thinking the entire watershed, and I heard that they're open to a carve out for lots smaller than 1 acre in A from the provisions to have small farm animals. That was all I heard.
That is exactly right.
But Henry, and it's fair point, I don't disagree with him, if we can clarify what the existing ordinance says about certificates of zoning compliance, that could be helpful to us. And it's probably worth raising whether we can exclude zone A, sub-zone A from the 200 square feet and keep it at 120.
And now also be honest, that the two of you have some conflict of interest because you also have a farm in the zone in
Yeah, okay, so
It's in LA.
you want me to?
Our farm's in LA.
Well, that's Henry's point, that's Henry's
Yeah.
point, but I don't know what that has to do with
I
anything.
agree, it wouldn't have anything to do with this, but.
If you want us to recuse ourselves.
No, no, you don't have to recuse yourself, it just has to be known very well. for
Well, they
people.
stated it at the town meeting that they owned.
Yeah.
They reported it to
Yeah.
P&Z.
Mary.
We have a friend who just bought land on West Street, 65 acres. West Street, up Lake, down West Street, they're in LC. How is 120 to 200 without nutrient allocation gonna impact the lake? I'm sorry, LA, I get it, I see it. And maybe it's because I own the farm, but we also own lakefront, we want both to have a win-win. LB and LC will not get us that win-win. I just don't see it, and I don't see the need for it. And Carl Nielsen has gone on record to say it's probably negligible, particularly because you're putting in 2 inches. And even Savannah Kitchen suggested 3 inches around that shed to protect it in terms of roof spill off and all that stuff. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay.
So we need to coalesce on what we want to propose at their next
We need to be
meeting.
united.
And we need to, yes, we need.
Well, and we need more people there.
Yeah.
Well-
We need, so
We need.
we have
need a
motion, I was gonna say, do we have a motion?
Well,
I think we need 3 the rest of the time to go to that.
I'd just like a reaction to what you heard and what you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we have.
I'm sorry, Chase the Rachel again. Differences of.
Hey, guys,
So- Has the proposals that you have, the 3 different proposals that you have, suggestions, sorry, has either of John Kiskowski or Savannah Kitchen, have you forwarded that to them, or have they seen these?
Planning and zoning actually made the recommendation for LA being excluded but one.
Yes, I know, but at the end of the planning and zoning meeting, Rick said to John Kiskowski
Right.
about the elegancy of the simplicity of it, and so I took that to mean that John was gonna be the lead on that. I didn't know if, so I don't know if is he supposed to be proposing something? I don't want you two to be working.
Now,
Side by
it
side.
was specific that it has to come
Yeah.
from LA. However,
Yes,
I think you make a very good point that we could sit down with John Brown and say, here's what LMAC is. Help us with the lane.
yeah, only to clean it up, or not clean it up.
I know what you mean, you know,
No,
I'm with you.
just so that, John can throw in front of planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Be done.
Yeah, I agree, we're not talking about wording tonight, we're just talking about concept.
Right.
But, yeah, I'll be honest, you probably should break it into 3, because I don't think it has a shot in hell if it comes all 3 together in one. Personally, I'm gonna vote negative on all 3 of them, because I just think it's an overreach, I really do. And I think we keep incrementally doing it, to everybody in town, and, so, I won't go into a ton of detail, but I don't think you guys have a shot. I don't think if the board decides to do this, you have any shot if you combine all 3. And.
So what are you suggesting?
I'm not, I
think.
personally don't want it at all. I'm gonna vote no on all 3 of them. If they're individual, if there is a package, I'm gonna vote no as well.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I'm against it, and for the
reason I just mentioned. But
What you're basically.
but what I'm saying,
You would like Carl to be able to proceed with a study, so we had some science to back up whatever we did.
exactly, we can't prove anything, like, even your comment, there's a lot of small sheds already going up. I haven't seen a lot of small sheds going up.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean there isn't, but everybody's perspective is so different. And I think making a blanket, ordinance that affects everybody in town is just the wrong thing to be doing. I really do. It just gives all the boards bad names, because it sounds like we're just incrementally picking away at everybody's right on their own property. I obviously want to balance protecting the land, that's why I sit on this board and all, but I think we have to be very careful in the future of what we're pushing and fight the right battles. Because not everything you're gonna win, that's all.
And Henry, just a comment on those small sheds, because I'm the person that has the small sheds. That was already approved by the town that was in. I could either put in one more big shed or 3 little ones just to take care of the equipment. So we put in 3 little ones to separate it instead of one big one. So, but it was already approved by the town and it didn't exceed, so,
Right.
you know.
It's 120
And I think that's worse, putting 3 little ones,
Yeah,
worse,
that's a-
because, with one big one, you can contain it, you can do a lot more things to protect the lake. If you're in the lake area or wherever you are, to protect that one as opposed to all 3, you're just gonna harm other. So, anyhow, that's my,
So you,
I'm against it.
I understand you're against this, but you're supporting that we do a study.
Oh, I definitely think we should dig in, because even the comments that were made, I didn't agree with a lot of the comments that the gentleman was making, because it was all assumption. I mean, even the review of the septic system, he went back, most of his study on those 3 septics against the lake was documentation that he dug up and one site visit, walking on top of it. I don't know if it was a dry day, a wet day, or what, but, knowing the pitch of that, so I think it's a good idea to actually have some information, because if we're ever gonna go talk to somebody, especially about their pets, we better have some information to back it up and try to do it in a very respectful way, because people get very defensive about it, and you want them to work with you and work with the town. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So if we had that kind of information, because most people are pretty good, you know what I mean? They don't want the lake to get damaged either. You know what I mean? And if you present it correctly, and we have the right information to say, we know that this is a certain type of bacteria, you know what I mean? And not only yours, but there's other people are contributing to it. These are how we think you could help, if you could do it. And 9 out of 10 people will help.
Say, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
exactly.
realize, or let's fix that problem.
But Jimmy, they don't want a study, and they'll just shoot, they were gonna spend $8,000, they claim it's actually gonna be more than that, who knows? I think we would, Carl, if he says it's 8,000, it's gonna be 8,000.
Oh.
It's gonna take X amount of time to do it.
Oh, I'm not talking about the wetlands, I'm talking about the study we're gonna do.
The DNA.
The DNA study.
Oh.
That's what I was. Yeah.
Not mixing up.
No, I thought that was the question.
No, there was.
I'm sorry, but there was a study.
No, but-
I'm sorry, but go ahead.
No, sorry, Mike,
No, go ahead.
let's reel it back.
Yeah.
What, and Henry corrected me on this, cause I misspoke at whichever meeting it was. Where LMAC had landed on this topic was to recommend to planning and zoning that they keep the public hearing open while we study whether or not there would be an impact of having small farm animals in the watershed. And that was the $8,000 study that TRC was going to do for us. Planning and zoning and all the public participants in the meeting, don't feel that A, it's gonna take too long to do, B, they're going to dispute the findings when we get them, because it's a sensitivity analysis, so you have to make assumptions and plug data in and run an analysis, and depending on what you plug in, you'll get what you get, so there's a lot of skepticism about the value of doing that study.
Gotcha.
Instead of that, they're proposing that we, without having those data, we compromise around excluding properties smaller than 1 acre from the small farm, the right, the ability to have small farm animals.
Only on the LA.
Just in LA, so that
I
makes
get that.
sense to me. Because most of the not all, because Mary's shown us that map, most of the non-conforming lots in town are around the lake. We know there's lots of small lots around the lake, so. A lot of them would be excluded from.
Are there any farm animals around the lake? Lots around the lake? I actually know them.
I actually could have farm animals on. I might have.
I don't know what I'm saying. We have, is there anything actively? Are there any?
My family did it one time, but doubtful took way out.
They had horses in your barn.
We had horses.
Yeah.
We had one horse.
Yeah, but you don't now, so the question is.
Yeah.
But right now, there's not.
And we had no.
We're trying to anticipate a problem.
Well, but we're doing zoning. Town's doing zoning that affects the future, okay? And so you also have to sit back and look.
And zoning constantly changes.
Right,
But that's what we're doing right now.
But you also have a principle that you can't end up doing spot zoning, which says, all right, we're gonna change the use of your 65 acres and nobody else's, okay?
Of course.
And so we also have a very large several parcels of land owned by a church camp, which hopefully always is gonna be a church camp. But it may,
It'll always be a church. It'll always be a church.
well, you never know. Well, let's hope it is, but with the,
Yeah, but honey, if that ever became a development, there'd be a ton of scrutiny. That would happen.
right, but you could,
Exactly.
you could end up making 33-acre horse parcels on that property. And if you don't think that would affect the lake. Now, every one of those parcels might not have horses, but you could create that possibility.
I think we're reaching.
Yeah,
We're trying to make an ordinance on something.
All right, so do we have a motion?
Or,
Well, I don't know, I think it's still a discussion.
yeah, okay, well, I'm just trying to hold it on.
Dave is confused.
So are we talking about people having sheds or people having animals?
There's
Yeah.
there's three, which is why I'm suggesting three motions. There's three areas that this subcommittee is recommending to element. Area one is exempt LA from 1 acre or less to have small animals or poultry. That's number one. Number two is exempt, are we saying that? Exempt LA from 120 square feet to building a accessory building to 200 square feet. That's two.
No, Henry wants it to be the entire watershed, A, B, and C, but.
That's
You're not making that part of the motion, but that's, I get, make.
To build that shed, would you have to have farm animals?
These are separate. It's really confusing, Jason Rico, 103 Lake Road, it's really confusing because they lumped a bunch of regs together and this just happens to be. This actually isn't even part of the ag, the 120, it's not even part of the ag portion of the regs that they're changing, so. This is like in a section before the ag, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
Yeah.
correct.
So then we get the, so,
3-2.
yes.
You're 8-, you're agriculture's rate. Something.
So the building and the building and the ag have, they could be yoked, but they're really
They're not.
separate, they're really.
All right,
And the third one, Mary?
and what's the third?
The third one is section 3-2, does it apply?
Well, that's just a clarification.
And that's clarification.
I argue legally that it does, but it would be good to have that recognition if you wanna, I mean. I think the town council would come out and tell you that, but I think it's just worthwhile for everybody to understand and agree to that. Rather than have to have a fight about it at a later time.
But it's a point, we're not asking them to change anything in the ordinance.
So
it's already there.
I would like to suggest.
I'm sorry, wait, one more.
Yeah.
Can we vote on an individual?
24 Doubleday, I'm not on board obviously, but I think that your assessment is correct, Mary, that that vertical is probably the best shrimp you have with Lake Area and with the port, so.
Is
Yeah.
this
I'm gonna
exempting,
agree.
no,
Right, I'm
farming.
agreeing with Mary, that's probably the best shot that the 3 points have.
All right, so
Could I make a motion?
please do,
Yeah,
Okay. I would like to make a motion that LMAC,
yeah,
recommend to the planning and zoning board that we retain 1 acre minimum for small farm animals for properties in LA district.
okay,
That's
We have-
motion number 1.
okay, so do we have a second for that?
I said,
We have a second, is there any further discussion?
Yes. I think instead of 1 acre, it should say conforming lot.
So it'd be 2 acre.
No, no.
That's a
It
conforming.
would be
Conforming lot
50,000
is
square.
50,000 square feet, an acre is about 43,700 square feet.
Make it simple, Henry, make it simple.
well, it's.
Well, the simplest would be a conforming lot.
No.
Well, no, because that can
Existing,
change.
the existing ordinance says 1 acre,
Well,
it
then
doesn't
let's,
say
okay,
conforming, which
right,
is
so let's
the
keep
one
it,
acre.
let's keep the mojo flowing here. Here's what they have, so, all right,
1 acre.
okay, do we, yeah,
Okay, 1 acre, I'll send this to you.
yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
We have 1, any abstentions?
Did Greg vote?
Greg,
Oh,
Greg, you opposed, Greg?
Greg, did you oppose or did you? Can't hear
You're muted.
I was in favor.
you. You voted approve?
Approved.
And little finger.
Okay, so motion, motion 1 is passed.
The minutes should note that Bob Howell is abstaining.
Yeah, he recused himself, but yeah.
I got him.
Okay,
Second motion.
second motion.
That LMAC recommend to planning and zoning that in LA district, we retain 120 square feet for sheds or outbuildings. And not go to 200.
Okay. All right, so we have a second,
What,
any further discussion?
what's the second paragraph about? That's.
Jesus.
We
It says
just
it-
break it into 2, one is for LA only, and the other one is the language they want for everybody, so
Yeah.
we just carved out LA and have a separate paragraph. that's
And
all.
this was for LA,
So I have a
Yes.
this
question.
120 square feet is for LA,
Correct.
Yes.
okay. So, do we have any further discussion?
Dory, did you wanna say something?
I kind of did, we've talked a lot about this, and, I guess my question is, if we already have 100, we already have 120, and the town wants to go to 200. The report was that it didn't make much of a change, and we're looking at this as why. The report that we got on the data,
I mean, Carl,
yes,
Carl said he felt 120 to 200, he didn't do any study, was negligible.
okay, there's no study,
His
okay.
perspective.
So we're concerned then that it's on a non-conforming lot, that it's crowding the lot?
Well, it's really, from my perspective, it's just triggering the full compliance of the whole lot. If you go over 120.
Henry wants more people to be able to come in so we can see what they're doing.
It causes you to fill
Potentially,
out, yeah.
potentially have to do some mitigation.
It requires-
And not only
That
have
allows
to
us to
mitigate
see.
that, you'd have to mitigate your house.
He wants to
So
trigger.
what you're
more.
saying is gonna require that
More
person to go
people.
above 200 to fill out a nutrient allocation worksheet.
Exactly.
So what I'm saying, if we don't do that, we don't get the benefit. In other words, you're saying that if you go above 200 square foot for a shed.
You go above it
X
right now.
amount of surface area that now blows
Right.
acid rain into the soil and potentially into the lake. That the process will require you now to go through.
If it's above 120 now, yeah.
Fill out the nutrient allocation sheet, calculate all of your property, all of your roof area, all of your impervious footprint. And look at that as an improvement process to the lake overall, long term. Henry's saying if we vote against it, you're not gonna have that check and balance.
No, you're not gonna have the trigger, you're not gonna have the trigger 200 below.
You're increasing the exemption from the trigger. Right.
Okay,
That, well said, right.
Yeah.
that,
Right.
okay.
By 80 square feet.
By 80 square feet, but so right now, the motion is to keep it at the 120 in the LA. Right?
Correct.
So it's existing,
Well,
what it is today,
Exists as today.
okay,
So,
so
exempt LA.
any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. We have 4, okay, all opposed? We have 1, 2, 3,
I thought
4,
about,
5,
thought what we said.
6,
I can-
and 7, we have 7 opposed, any abstentions, we have 1. Okay, so.
Motion denied.
Motion denied,
Thank you.
okay,
I can live with.
all right, do we have any other, do you have any other?
I don't think we need a motion.
No, you don't need a motion.
We'll
We just
make the
need
point, we can make the point in the meeting,
That's
and
fine.
Mary's already been in touch with the zoning officer.
All right, moving, what else do we need to deal with tonight, because we're now at 2 hours. There was something, Henry, that you had mentioned? Welcome back.
Yeah,
Inspection procedure was what you wanted to.
we can,
Well, that's
we're
not,
talking about the rafts and moorings again. The non-motorized watercraft inspection, we got into a little bit earlier.
yeah,
And I just wish to say that presently, unless somebody tells me that I'm wrong, that what we submitted to the Marine Patrol was for stickers to go on motorboats as part of that inspection, and the sticker program for non-motorized watercraft does not start until we have the new ordinance in place, whatever its effective date is. And we should clarify that for Marine Patrol, because there was some confusion on that.
okay,
Well, Marine Patrol was not trained in the nuances you're explaining, Henry. They were given, this is how you do Marine Patrol. This is-
Right, but it's right on the face of the checklist.
Correct. On the checklist, there is a differentiation at the bottom, motorized. So,
Non-motorized, and the only motorized and non-motorized are differentiated. And the only place that it has stickers is under the motorized section.
correct. I'm not sure Marine Patrol was
No, we're all,
taught that.
yeah, that's all, I'm not finding fault, we're just
You just-
looking to get it clarified.
Mary, who got straight before.
If the point's been made, I think we need to update as to what happened at BOS last night relative to the launch, town ordinance.
okay,
The BOS has accepted the town ordinance as is. They are moving forward with a public hearing on June 17th. I think all of us should be there. I think it was unanimous, correct me if I'm wrong, that we approve this town ordinance. And I think we need to be there to support this town ordinance going forward.
Tuesday the 17th.
Tuesday, June
6:30.
6:30.
6:30.
6:30.
Be on Zoom. I will Zoom that.
There will be no Zoom.
Sit down.
It's in Melbourne.
But I will Zoom.
There's no Zoom.
No Zoom.
Board of Selectmen meeting will have Zoom. We'll adjourn from the public hearing to the Board of Selectmen meeting.
It won't be Zoom, the public hearing?
No, because it'll be in there.
No, I can't move all this equipment
Right.
from Yeoman's to this room.
Should I write a letter then?
Sure,
I'll write a letter of support.
that's fine.
I just think we all need to be there to support this ordinance, every section.
I'll be in Sedona, so I commute.
Okay,
I
so,
got one question, the ordinance I missed last meeting, maybe, has it been approved by DEP yet?
It doesn't need to go to
It's
the.
not going through DEP.
So it's only for the boat ramp.
Correct.
Because
Things not on the lake, it's only for things.
It's only for launching.
the ordinance has been sent to you, if I would like,
I know,
I have to resend it.
It's also important for people to have this coming Monday, the 9th down, to be at that zone.
The zoning meeting.
To get a compromise of some sort.
Oh, for this thing.
Through, yes. Because it's. We had a smaller force representing what LMAC feels and what the history is and so forth, and it needs to have a larger consensus, consistent voice of how important it is to be controlling the risk of phosphate getting into the lake. If we're talking now about checking ENAs to see whether it's a cat or a dog, you know, we're trying to catch the net fairly low. If we're looking to capture the dust that falls out of the air from the fires in Canada that fall onto our.
But Henry, we'll say,
rooftops, we're setting the threshold low.
careful when you say that, because we're not going after cats and dogs, we're doing it to be
No, no,
understand. You know, I tend to think it's septic, it's just coming from somewhere else.
Well,
That's
it
what
may
I
be,
understand.
but
That's what I'm hoping.
we
When you
won't,
say that, people.
yeah, we won't say that.
No.
At the hearing, but I'm saying, I'm talking to you here, that they've at least introduced the possibility
Yeah, gotcha.
that a cat or a dog could be responsible for that level of increase. If they were sitting there saying it couldn't be a cat or a dog because they would have to take 100 dogs to do that, then we know, but you know, there's a
Well, he
possibility.
didn't say it. I don't know, I'd like to see his documentation.
Couch fit that, he doubted.
Yeah.
I wanted to add a
Then why
point
spend
about,
20 minutes on cotton dogs?
I wanted to add a point about the ordinances, and Henry, I must say, I was a little surprised at the position you took at the BOS meeting last night, because I thought we had voted as a group, I know you didn't agree, that we would want to implement these ordinances immediately, and the board was definitely in favor of doing that, so once they get through the public hearing and they're approved by the BOS, they want to move forward, so we need to start thinking about educational materials,
Okay.
because that will be an important element of this.
Especially in the.
Most of it is.
Right, that's good.
So here, are we going to have the gate, is that the card for the gate?
That's
Is that-
what we're gonna do.
All right, so already,
The gate
so
card.
is that supposed to come up at the public hearing, is that what I messed up?
No,
It's not.
It doesn't,
that's gonna happen no matter
no
what.
matter what, that, the PO has been issued, the vendor has been.
If this ordinance doesn't go through, the gate will, to get an access card, there'll be, an undertaking or an agreement, if you will, between the card owner and the town. And that agreement will control the use of the card in these access issues as far as the gate's concerned.
That's right,
But we also, last meeting, didn't we talk about educating the
That has to happen regardless.
the people that own houses on these
Correct.
lakes, on this lake, that are renting their house, Airbnb,
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep,
Correct.
They're bringing a vessel to the property and they're launching it, so we also discussed, what about educating them?
Right.
Somehow, you know, put these little
Yes.
doorknobs of the home.
The
on
board
it.
of selectmen approved that.
Okay, so they
They
did.
want us to do that.
both ways,
I
in
think
their
that's a great
mailbox and
idea.
on their docks.
I think that's a great idea.
And even in all the watershed, they want to get educational materials out, not just labor.
Yeah, and that's
So
what
it's kind of
happens whether the
self-policing
ordinance
for
passes
everyone.
or not.
Yeah.
We need to be working on that, so that there needs to be another
They
subcommittee
give you
put
the handout
together to help on
at the
this.
boat ramp. When you launch your
Well,
boat,
this
they give you a
is, this is off the boat ramp, this is
Yeah.
personal launching of kayaks or canoes or
Anything.
whatever. This is.
The
But
current,
you're right, a handout.
the current ordinance requires each landowner to do those inspections right now, so we're not doing anything other than to try to educate them
Right.
what they're
Because
supposed to be doing. What we're
I'll
doing with
guarantee
the
you
new
90%
ordinance
of how we don't know
is
that.
increasing.
People that are renting their houses out don't know that.
But you
they're
Richard,
tenants.
there's two B and Bs on the lake, I didn't know that till today. We should find out who they are and ensure that we have that education go to those people so that they can provide that to their renters.
They could put it right in the list. I mean, as a statute form.
Yeah.
Very easy, yeah, that's what I do.
Well, there are also a lot of people that still don't belong to the CLA or are not getting information. So how do you plan on addressing that?
Dot, And mailbox,
Okay.
literally,
So when you say B and B, what do you mean? There's people who rent houses year round.
Airbnb,
You
whatever.
mean Airbnb, so advertise, you can hear.
Yeah. I didn't realize until
Or
this.
VRBO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of houses to rent.
And CLI will try to help with the educational,
But
outreach.
I think the point is that they're gonna be looking to LMAC to help pull that off, so I think we should have an education subcommittee.
Yeah.
You know, together, and be able to say that on the 17th that we have.
I know who's on it because I've already drafted for the gate, so I hope we can carry over and draft it for off the gate.
And I'll volunteer because it's a CLA.
You wanna put this together now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should, I think we can say.
It'd be nice to say at the meeting.
We have the committee, yeah.
Yeah, all we have to have is the committee, so who's volunteering for the committee?
I can do it via Zoom. I would
You're a
support it.
good reviewer.
I'm a good
Yeah.
reviewer. I read it all.
We have four,
Michael?
we have four.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
That's
Okay.
good.
Mike, do you want it?
Mike's a
Yeah.
good reviewer.
I can zoom in on a lot of meetings, just let me know when.
Yeah, you got Mike.
Unless I'm in the Grand Canyon and.
Are you volunteering? I saw your hand up there. Saw your hand up, be careful. All right.
Can I just make a comment, a positive comment? I've taken my boat, my new boat, in and out several times over at the public beach, the boat launch. And each time I've gone to put it in, I have been, they are right out there inspecting my boat, and all it does is go from the lake over to my house and then back to the lake. And they're very, very thorough. Yeah. Good stuff. And I have my ARS sticker.
I have a question, like,
Alright, is there any,
Can I just want
well, I wanna know, where's that police boat come from? What happened to the red one?
It has a defect, it went back to the manufacturer, so we're using a borrowed.
You need a new one?
That's a bar boat?
Okay.
That's.
It.
I hope it's under
People
warranty.
tell me the DEP.
Well, it's under warranty, but
and that's-
Zodiac doesn't know why.
Is
You should keep that boat, that's a better boat than.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice boat.
Is it a motor?
Adjourn?
Wait, we have one other comment.
Under new business, I think,
The Boston Whales.
because of the fact this was brought up in the audience of citizens, we ought to have Mark report, what about the fallen tree protocol?
Well, it's irrelevant right now. I mean, there's no sense of urgency to that.
Well, there is,
There's
because
a
there are
tree
trees in the lake.
lake.
There is a tree in the lake.
Somebody's complaining.
Beth
That's
Beth told Dara Stevens they called 4 vendors and it's too difficult with the water to get that one under Joni Road out.
Well, what about over on 87?
Vera, I don't know what you wanna do with her.
I already instructed Vera that the tree has to be severed. The tree is laying on live power right now. I said, Public Works is not gonna touch it until you take away the dry part of the tree that's on land. We'll take care of it when the drawdown, but you have to sever it. So that was laid here.
Those are the two.
So you're planning, it sounds like they're both gonna happen when the drawdown happens, is that the idea?
Well, apparently under Joni,
That's bad.
from what Dara Stevens said, because it's talking about. Partial.
And this is a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, that doesn't have to
It
happen.
would not be felt.
Okay, so.
You don't wanna say her?
Motion.
Motion.
Yes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mark.
It is done.
The jam, David?
Yeah, that's just for everybody's knowledge of, I didn't put it together professionally. We did it.
Well, that's fine, that's fine.
Just so you can see
Yeah.
what we did.
Totally fine.
On the left.
I got my name.
Down.
You're on it. You volunteered for something else.
Thank you for everything.
It's already, it's on the red